Don't forget, ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone is a real simple way to show your support for what's going on here week after week. Hi everyone, this is Nicole Rivera and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast for writers who are looking for their writing community. I know you want to find readers for your work, but I think your first step is to connect with other writers. That's what we're going to do here in the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We'll do writing prompts and other writing group activities, discover online writing communities, learn how to find local writing groups, or how to make your own. Join us as we explore, learn, and write. This week's episode of Stop Writing Alone is sponsored by the Stop Writing Alone coffee page. That's ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone. What can you do on the coffee page? Well, there are 3 things. Number 1 is that you can donate. Just simply pop on in and donate as many cups of coffee as you would like to help me keep going and keep me fueled for all things Stop Writing Alone. The second thing you can do is you can drop into the shop on the coffee page. Right now, there is the PDF of the Sci-Fi Fantasy Writing Workshop notebook that I created after going to a workshop in BookCon. It has all the exercises that we did for world building and all things speculative fiction, sci-fi, and fantasy. I highly recommend it. I loved all those exercises, and that's why I want to share it with you. But the third thing that you can do on the coffee page is that you could become a regular supporter of Stop Writing Alone. If you come on in now, starting in 2021, all supporters will get exclusive content right on the coffee page. So you'll be getting more PDFs just like this notebook. You'll be getting exclusive writing prompts and other contact from me that will only be happening behind the scenes there. So that's ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone, where you can do any one of those 3 things starting today to help support all that you hear here on the YouTube channel, in the community, and beyond. Again, that's ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone. Now on to our episode. Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. This episode's going to air on the final day of one heck of a year, 2020. I've spent the last couple of episodes doing quite a bit of reflection as we've had, the big deal of the 100th episode and the culminating episode reflecting on all things NaNoWriMo and the Happy Campers Club for this year. So I think it's time to shift gears and start to look forward. Because chances are you're not even going to be listening to this in 2020. You will be in the brand new year, looking forward, setting new goals, and asking yourself, what is next? Whether you want to actually call that a New Year's resolution or just a goal that you want to set for yourself this year is completely up to you. I feel like resolutions kind of get this weird vibe about them that they're this lofty thing that is, I'm going to change everything about me this year, and oftentimes turn into things that are unsustainable or just too much, 1 month in. So what I want to talk to you guys about are the steps that I have taken over the years for what have been my writing goals in essence, but the things that I have been calling my writing resolutions. And I've followed the same 7 steps year after year since the first time that I decided to set myself a writing resolution. Just when I was like, this is a serious part of my life. This is where I want to grow most. What do I need to do to make that happen? So I'm also going to include in the show notes a link for you to get my Writing Resolution Workbook, which is an oldie but a goodie. It is something that I shared with the Stop Writing Alone community as I first launched the podcast. It actually was before the podcast launched. For that first year. And I've adapted it slightly for this year, but it's the same 7 steps. You can print it out and you can work through the 7 steps in the workbook itself, or just bring it up on your computer and go through everything in the notebook. But it's exactly what I'm going to tell you here. So, and also, this is not something that you necessarily only can do on New Year's. Like, that's my whole thing, my whole resistance around resolutions, is that people only tend to think about them at this time of year. But particularly with my experience as a teacher, I love to think of new goals and resolutions around the beginning of the school year, sometimes even at the end of the school year, because you have this whole like sprawling summer out before you. Basically, I think these kinds of thoughts that we have about resolutions, goal setting, these great changes that we want to make in our lives are great things to think about anytime there is some sort of shift. Because it's like, if something's changing in our schedule or in our day-to-day life, we can also add in something new while that shift is happening. And 2020 was an excellent year to sort of exemplify that, because everybody's life took some step to the left or right. Some people were much more dramatic than others. If you were an essential worker, your work schedule probably did not change in the same way that many people who had to work from home all of a sudden and change all of that. But you still had a shift in probably your workload and your emotional burdens throughout the year. So we all had shifts. And for some of us, we were able to take that shift and add something new to elevate ourselves and form new habits that lifted us up in some way. And for some of us, there were new habits that maybe weren't healthy and not helpful to us. But now's a great time to take a look at that and see what we can do in this tiny shift of time. There's actually an article that came out this week about, should we just give up on celebrating New Year's altogether? The basic premise was, how different is changing from 2020 to 2021 than changing from Monday to Tuesday or December to January? So pretty interesting stuff, but we have all, as a society, put a great emphasis on this particular shift. So in so doing, we follow through as writers and we say, what can we do to make this year, another step in the direction of our great writing goal? So I have 7 steps, and I'll tell you the steps first, and then we'll break them down one by one. Step number one is always, whether this is a weekly goal or a yearly goal, assess where you are. Step 2, take just one step up from wherever you are. Assess where you are, and then step 2, take one step up from where you are. Step 3, write it down. Write it down wherever. Well, we'll get into the details of that in a minute, but step 3 is write it down. Step 4 is pick and stick to a deadline. Step 5, plan it out. Step 6, share your goal. And step 7, always, always, always be flexible. So those are the 7 steps. What do they mean? Assess where you are. I think step 1 is pretty self-explanatory. If you are looking to create a year-long goal for your writing, the thing you need to do in this moment is reflect upon the year that just passed and ask yourself, what did I do? What did I accomplish in my writing in this past year? And when you are doing this for yourself, for your own writing resolution, be real with yourself. Don't make anything more lofty than it was. Also, don't be harder on yourself than necessary. What did you actually get done in this past year? Did you show up regularly for your writing? Did you find spaces where you were very inspired and those were the only times you wrote? I mean, this year is a very unique sort of reflection because there were so many personal challenges placed before us. But even so, even if this year was not as productive for you as, let's say, 2019, I believe in this first step where you're assessing where you are. I think you have to look at 2020. I don't think you should look back at 2019 and say, well, that's what I was able to do in 2019. And the only reason I wasn't able to accomplish more in 2020 was because of everything else that happened. Right now, you are where you are. And whatever the reason is, there's not much saying that everything's going to change tomorrow, right? So you have to assess where you are now and say, under the current conditions of the way this year just panned out, what were you able to accomplish? What did you get done? What is still left undone? And jot that all down. So this is part of what I've done in the workbook is I've left space for you to write all this stuff down, to give yourself a moment to really write out, what did I get done in the previous year? Once you have that all sort of down, and again, we're being realistic about what you were able to accomplish and not accomplish. No guilt, by the way, when you're doing this. This is not an opportunity to beat yourself up. This is just being real. What did I get done? Then step 2, like I said, is to take one step up. And this is where we got to be smart about setting our goals. One of the issues that I feel like comes up with any kind of New Year's resolution is that people try to go from 0 to 60, without taking these incremental steps. So one step up from wherever you are. So for example, one year I completed the first draft of my novel. The next year, my goal was to revise it and find a critique partner. One year, after writing tons of short stories in my writing group and on my blog, my goal was to submit something, anything, to someone in the publishing world. This year, for me, for those of you who've been following, last year I did the 52 stories in 52 weeks. I did it. I managed to show up and write. I've definitely written at least 52 short stories in 52 weeks. Some of them are great. Some of them are horrendous. Some I don't even remember. I look back and I'm like, who wrote this? Oh my goodness, that was me. So what's one step up from that? 2 choices. One is that I could spend the entire year revising all 52 short stories to a point of, I'm madly in love with all of them. Or I can start submitting and just say, I'll focus on the ones that I really like, polish them up, and start getting out there. And so for me, that is one of my writing goals this year, is to start submitting. And maybe in the process that will end up being more of them revised than I can even fathom right now. But it's just one step up, starting to submit. And for me, my personal challenge, I had 52 short stories written in 52 weeks this past year. This year, I'm going to try to do 52 submissions in 52 weeks. That doesn't necessarily mean 52 separate stories being submitted. It could be one story being submitted multiple times. But each week, I want to show up and make sure that I submit something somewhere. And for me, I feel like that is one step up from where I was. Your question is, looking at where you were, what you accomplished this last year, what's the next step you can take? Did you complete a draft of a novel? Is your goal to revise it? Is it maybe to revise it and query, is that too much for 1 year? Or is it, go all the way, revise it and self-publish? That could be one step. You do have a full year ahead of you. Whatever it is that you think you want to do in 2021, write it down. Be specific. Get your goal down in words that, are, this is exactly what I would like to have done by the end of the year. Once you have it written down, it's all about picking deadlines. So in the case of my submissions, I kind of have a weekly deadline going for myself. Like each week I have to do a submission. In the previous year where I had a completed novel and I wanted to revise it, I had set up a deadline for myself to have it revised by the summer so that I could start to get a critique partner for the second half of the year. So depending on what your goal is, you may have some sort of repeating deadline. You may have a singular deadline. Your deadline might be December 31st, 2021, if it's just to get one large project done. But step 5 is huge. Once you have, an endpoint, a finish line for your goal, it's then time to plan it out. You've got to think it through. You've got to work backwards from that date. How can this be accomplished? What are the actual steps required for you to reach that goal in time? So again, I'll keep using my example. I have this goal where I need to submit a story or, do a submission every single week. First thing I got to do is make sure that I have a story that's ready to roll, right? I have to do a little research on what are the places that I want to submit to. So I need to plan out my weeks now so that I have all of this set up, working backwards from, okay, by the end of the week, I want to have this submission in. Again, when I was doing the revision of the novel, I planned out using one of the patterns that I love to do when I'm doing longer projects is that I draft a novel in November, December for NaNoWriMo and wrapping it up in December. And then I like to do revisions in April for the Camp NaNoWriMo and then massive total final rewrites in July. So those are my deadlines, my planning backwards to getting something done like I had done that year, getting the novel totally revised by the summer so that I could find a critique partner for the second half of the year. You can do the same. You can use structures and challenges that are out there to help motivate you. Or if you don't need external motivation, you just get your schedule, you plan it backwards, and then you get it on your calendar. Once you have everything sort of planned out and you have not only your ultimate deadline, but these checkpoints within your time for when you're going to accomplish your goal. And I should make a point that a wonderful structure to use is the quarterly model. And businesses use this everywhere for a reason. It works. It takes an entire year and breaks it into seasons, basically, 4 different seasons of the year. So you take your year and you just break it into 4. So that's 3-month increments, and see what can you get done by the end of the first quarter. Put that on your calendar and you can have that mapped out for yourself and then go from there. Particularly with the year that we just got through here, this 2020, looking at quarters rather than full years might be really useful because we don't know how things might shift up in the middle of this year. If you're on a, work from home sort of routine right now that allows for more flexibility perhaps in your writing and showing up for all of your writing, if getting back into the office changes that, you may really want to look at this goal and resolution not as the full year, but as a quarterly goal, just in case after the first quarter your entire schedule shifts. And then you can repeat this exact process at that point when the quarter ends. So that would be at the end of March going into April. Step number 6, regardless of how you're setting up your deadlines, your goals, what you have on your calendar, step number 6 is essential. And of course, the thing that I, the host of Stop Writing Alone, I'm going to make sure we discuss, and that is share your goal. Whether it's with one other accountability partner or a group, a community, just get your goal out there and make sure that you're sharing with the right person or people. So one of the things that I put in the workbook here is like, don't go to, your best bud who's the first one to share a hot fudge sundae with you when you start feeling down on not keeping up with your diet goal. Because while we all need that person in our life for the warm and fuzzies, when it comes to actually sticking to our goals, we need somebody who's going to keep us accountable and really not bend so easily, and make sure to challenge us in those moments when we might be feeling weak ourselves. There are accountability groups all over the place, but I'm sure within your friendship circle and your own family, the person that is going to be the one that's going to bend with you and let you get away with murder, and the other person that is going to hold you up to this. But of course, we are going to have a conversation about this in the Stop Writing Alone community. So you can come on over to the Facebook page and right there share what your goal is. And we will be there to be your sounding board and your support and your reminder. You can either share it on the Facebook community. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Stop Writing Alone. These are things that Stop Writing Alone is made for, right? To have these conversations with other people who are in the trenches of writing, who understand what it takes to get your revisions done, or just to draft something new, to show up consistently for your writing. I've spoken about this many times in the podcast. Our friends and family love us dearly, and they want to support us in many ways. But if they are not in the work of being a writer, they can't necessarily speak to what challenges we may be having along the way. So you want to make sure that you have a good match with who you're sharing your goal with. This way they can support you in the right ways when the time comes. So the only thing left, because there are 7 steps, and of course sharing with your community and sharing your goal is one of the most important to me. But step number 7 is huge, and that is be flexible. Anytime you set yourself a goal or create a resolution or try to do something new in your life, there are going to be things that come up that are going to take you down a new path. I mean, this is something that I've had in the resolution workbook since I wrote it back in 2018. And I do feel like I needed to speak more about it then than I probably do now. Any person who has lived through 2020 understands that sometimes you got to be flexible about the things that you thought you were going to get accomplished within a year's time. But I've had so much experience with this to my benefit that I can't help but underscore how big a deal this is. So the first time I ever set myself a serious, I'm not joking around, this is my writing resolution goal, was on New Year's Eve going into 2016. 2016, I said, this year, no joke anymore, I am going to get my novel out there. Enough. I've been rewriting it, revising it. I'm getting it out there. And to my mind, that meant that I'm writing my query and I am going to get an agent, or at least start querying agents. Like, that was my goal. And as I started to learn about how to write a query and I started crafting it the right way, the year started to move on. And in the summer, I discovered this thing that I'd never heard of before, a contest called Pitch Wars. And if you've been a long-time listener of this podcast, you know how this story ends. Pitch Wars is essentially a contest where you submit your query letter, and I am going to not remember this correctly, but I want to say it's the first couple of chapters of your book, but it has to be a completed manuscript, to a panel of mentors. You pick 4 different mentors that you want to possibly work with, and you put this whole submission package together for them, and you kind of like cross your fingers that you win a menteeship, that one of those people will pick you to be the person that you work with for that year, and they work with you through your novel and your query and everything. And I was like, well, my goal was to get my novel out there, and I thought that meant getting my query in the hands of an agent. But I thought that when I didn't know this existed, so I'm going to try this. I was flexible about it. I didn't pass on this opportunity of Pitch Wars because it wasn't the goal that I imagined on December 31st. And again, if you listen, you know the story. I won a spot, and I got to work with a published author on my novel for the rest of for the next couple of months in the year. And it was a life-changing experience for me. I know many people that are so strict with themselves, with their goal setting, with their resolutions, that would have seen that and said, that sounds really cool, but not this time, because this year I said I was going to get an agent. Maybe next year for my New Year's resolution, I'll say I'll try to get into Pitch Wars, and they would have just walked on past it. I don't know that a 2017 mentor would have picked me. I was in the right place at the right time with the right novel and the right query at the right time to get that. And it's happened again where I've set a particular goal for the year, and in my mind, I thought that meant one thing. It ended up meaning something else, and there you have it. So be flexible. This thing that you write down, even though you write it down in this workbook, even though you share it with the community, don't feel like you are shackled to these exact words. You're being specific about your goal because the universe needs a direction. Okay, so I'm going to get totally woo-woo on you right now. But when we're going through our life here, it's like we're on a drive. And if you don't type in an address into your life's GPS, you are going to be driving around in circles. So writing down your goal for 2021 or the first quarter of 2021 or next week, whatever it is giving an address to the GPS so the GPS can say, oh, so that's where you want to end up? Great. Turn left. And then you can start your drive. Now, if you turn left and you see like the most amazing carnival going on and you want to stop the car and get out, then get out. Don't just drive on by if this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Okay, I'm going to dive deep in this metaphor if I don't pull myself out in a minute. That's all I mean about being flexible. Make sure you don't pass up on opportunities just because they're not your GPS address that you typed in the first place. But that's it, guys. That's all it takes. These 7 steps, I think, are not only for the year long, but anytime you want to set a goal, you can do this in a very macro or micro way. And I've found so much success following these steps over and over again for myself, not just in my writing, but I have to say that it is my writing journey that has really made this process so clear to me that this is the route to take. So like I said, in the show notes will be a link for you to get the workbook if you do want to print it out. But you've got all the tools right now. You know your 7 steps, and I will repeat them for you right now. You want a resolution for the new year. Your step 1 is assess where you are right now. Step 2, take one step up. And again, you can iterate that throughout the year. If you accomplish that one step, you could take one step again. But right now, just take one step up. Write it down. What is that next step that you want to take moving forward? Step 4, pick a deadline to accomplish, to reach that one step. Step 5, plan it out. And, I'll say in parentheses, work backwards from your date. Step 6, share your goal over in Stop Writing Alone community. And step 7, be flexible. That's it, guys. This is going to be an amazing year. And I say that because in some ways, 2020 was an amazing year for a bunch of people I know. It wasn't, we can't have everything. It was a terrible year. I have lost people. And my heart has been broken over and over again this year. But there are parts of this year that have been amazing. And, there's no reason why parts of next year can't be amazing for you too. So, you have the tools. You have the community. You are, as one of my favorite podcasts like to say, out of excuses. That would be the Writing Excuses podcast. If you're not listening to them, go check them out. So you're out of excuses. Go set your goal for this year. Let's get something new accomplished. Let's get your words out into the world in a real way. And I can't wait to see what you've got for us next. Have a wonderful week. Thank you, as always, for listening. I'll talk to you next Thursday. And Happy New Year. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Stop Writing Alone podcast wherever you're listening to this episode today. Then connect with us on Facebook at Stop Writing Alone Facebook page or in the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group. Check Instagram or Twitter where I'm at NV_Rivera to find links to our email newsletter. Recording, hosting, editing, producing. It's so much work. Disaster has struck. I finished my coffee. Tell me coffee is coming. ko-fi.com/stop writing alone.